The information shared on Light Body Radio is for educational and informational purposes only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed healthcare provider, or qualified wellness practitioner with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health goal. Dr. Lara May, her guests, and affiliates do not claim to cure, prevent, or treat any condition and are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and that any actions you take based on the content are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in to Light Body Radio.
Welcome to Light Body Radio, where science meets soul and healing gets multidimensional. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, master intuitive Reiki channel, and certified life and health coach. Here we decode root causes, transmute stuck energy, and empower your full spectrum healing journey, body, mind, and light body. This isn't just wellness, it's awakening, grounded in science, guided by spirit, and designed for your evolution. Let's rise and radiate. Welcome to the next level of you. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, certified life coach, intuitive healer, and someone who has spent years exploring healing from many angles. I don't know if I could say every angle imaginable, but I'm working on it, from biochemistry to neuroscience to spirituality and energy medicine. And this is a Wellness Illuminated episode, which is just you and me having a chat about this week. It will be about meditation. So we're talking about something that is simultaneously one of the oldest healing practices on earth and probably yet still one of the most misunderstood: meditation. So before you hit pause or skip because you think, oh, meditation's not for me, I've already tried it, I suck at it. Maybe you have sat quietly for 5 minutes and you just realize that your brain and your thoughts are getting louder and more out of control. Maybe you thought that you're just doing it totally wrong. Or maybe you've just convinced yourself that you are someone that can't meditate and you've given up. If that's you, then this episode is definitely for you. So I encourage you and I invite you to stick around, because my challenge to myself today is to completely change the way you think about meditation. And in fact, by the end of today's conversation, I hope that you'll realize that meditation actually isn't about stopping your thoughts at all. It isn't about becoming perfectly calm. And it isn't about sitting cross-legged on a mountain with, no distractions and just being, perfectly in Zen. Meditation is actually, excuse me, one of the most practical, biological, evidence-based tools that we have for changing our brain, regulating our nervous system, improving our health, and reconnecting with who we truly are at our core. And today we're going to explore meditation through several different lenses. The first is the neuroscience. The second is the functional medicine. The third is the life. The last piece is the spiritual lens, the spirituality. Because all four of these different lenses are describing the exact same thing, but we're just using different languages to describe it and to give it context. And so I think this will really help you see meditation in a new light and through a different lens. And so let's dive in. And you'll notice today my background's a little different. This is the Shri Yantra, which when we get to different types of meditation, one of them I'll talk about is meditating with your eyes open. And this is one of the tools that I use. So I will pop my head out of the way so you can see the full thing, but then we'll talk about what it is and why. So, okay. So part one, this first piece of this episode is meditation isn't what you think. If I asked 100 people why they don't meditate, I bet 90% of them would say the exact same thing. And it's because, quote, my mind won't stop. And here is the fascinating part about that is that actually isn't a problem. That's actually proof that your brain is working exactly as it was designed to. The goal of meditation has never been to eliminate thinking. The goal is to change our relationship with our thinking. And this is a huge distinction. Our brain is designed to generate thoughts nonstop. That's actually how it's supposed to work. 24 hours a day. It predicts, it analyzes, it plans, it remembers, it protects us, and it's constantly asking, what if? What happens if, dot, dot, dot. And this incredible prediction machine is what kept our ancestors alive. If you were living thousands of years ago, the brain constantly scanning for danger was incredibly useful. And that is why it has evolved the way it has and why it functions the way it does today. So the actual problem is our modern brain still behaves as if every email, every difficult conversation, every social media post, every unexpected expense, uncomfortable emotion could threaten our survival. That's how our brain interprets all of those unknowns. And the brain cannot actually distinguish between physical danger and emotional discomfort as what's real and what's not. And so it responds the exact same way to an unpleasant emotion as it does to actual physical danger. Our heart rate increases, our stress hormones rise, our muscles tense up, our attention narrows. The body prepares for action. It is getting prepared for that fight or flight. All because of thoughts, not our physical reality, just a thought. Again, your brain cannot distinguish between the reality of a thought versus what's literally happening in front of you. And so when those thoughts continue hour after hour, day after day, month after month, we eventually call that burnout, stress. And here is something that I find fascinating, that our brain consumes roughly 20% of our body's total energy. So even though it represents only about 2% of our body weight, it's a very actually like energetically expensive, metabolically expensive organ. The brain is constantly processing information. Scientists estimate tens of thousands of thoughts every single day. Some estimates place that number around 60,000. Others suggest even much higher. And that exact number really isn't as important as understanding the principle that our brain never stops generating mental activity, even when we sleep and even when we're resting, and even when you think you're doing absolutely nothing. In neuroscience, it's called default mode network, or DMN. And so think about that as our brain's autopilot. And whenever our attention isn't focused on a specific task, this network becomes active. It begins replaying old conversations. It is rehearsing future scenarios. Sometimes I like to call that future tripping. I got that from a teacher of mine, Gabby Bernstein. I love that concept, like we're future tripping about future things that haven't even happened yet. We're judging ourselves. We're analyzing the past. We're predicting problems, actually making things up that haven't even happened yet. We're comparing ourselves to others. We're creating all different kinds of stories. And the default mode network actually is incredibly useful. It helps us learn from experience and imagine future possibilities. But when it becomes overactive, it can also contribute to our rumination, our anxiety, the chronic stress, the depression, all of those things. So meditation doesn't get rid of this network, but it teaches you when to step out of this autopilot and you can step into conscious awareness with intention. And that shift is where transformation begins. That's where change begins. Because the moment that you can observe your thoughts instead of just automatically buying into them and believing them, you create space between the stimulus and the response. And inside that tiny space, that's where freedom lives. And it's not because your thoughts disappeared, but it's because you stopped letting every thought become your reality. And that's why meditation isn't an escape from your mind. It's a way of getting to know your mind. And once you know how your mind works, you gain the ability to choose how you respond instead of reacting to it on autopilot. And that single little shift can change your health. It can change your relationships. It can change your work. And it can change your entire experience of life. Think about that. That's really impactful and amazing. So, what actually happens when in the brain when we meditate? For years, scientists thought meditation was simply a not reaction, a relaxation technique. But thanks to advanced MRI studies, imaging, and EEG technology, we now know so much more about meditation and what's actually happening in the brain. Meditation doesn't just help us feel different, it actually changes the structure and the function of our brain. Now, think about that for a moment. That means that our brain isn't fixed and it isn't hardwired. Some of these words that often get thrown around when we talk about neuroscience and the brain. It's constantly adapting to whatever you repeatedly do. And this ability, this adaptation, this constant adapting is actually called neuroplasticity. And I'm sure you've heard us talk about this before on the show, especially with guests. The brain's remarkable capacity to form new neural pathways throughout your entire life. So the old saying of you can't teach old dogs new tricks, you actually can. Any old human or any old dog can learn a new trick, and it can build new neural pathways. So every repeated thought strengthens a pathway. Every repeated emotion reinforces a circuit, and every repeated behavior becomes easier to access the next time. So that can either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what you're repeating, right? So it's the neurological version of walking through a field. The first time you cross the field, you push through tall grass. Maybe the path is barely visible. But if you walk the same route every day, eventually a well-worn trail forms. Your brain works in much the same way. The more often you think a particular thought or respond in a certain way, the stronger that neural pathway becomes. So maybe you've spent years worrying. Maybe you've spent years criticizing yourself. Maybe you've spent years literally assuming the worst outcome possible. Sometimes we call those pessimists. You might know one in your life. Maybe you are even one. It's okay. No judgment here. Again, it's about awareness. Those patterns become familiar highways in the brain, not because they're true, but because they've been traveled so often. And the wonderful news here is that neuroplasticity works in both ways, in both directions. So if you can build stress in a pathway, you can also build resilience in a pathway. And meditation is one of the most effective ways that we in the scientific community and in the self-help and spirituality community know to how to strengthen those healthier neural networks. So one of the first things meditation does is influence the autonomic nervous system. So think of your nervous system as having two primary gears. It's like a two-geared bike. The sympathetic nervous system is your gas pedal. This is your fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn response. And it's essential when you are facing genuine danger. Your heart rate increases, Blood pressure rises, blood sugar increases to provide that quick fuel that you'll need to run. Your digestion slows or shuts down. Your immune system temporarily shifts its priorities, and the blood flow moves away from your digestive tract and towards your peripheral muscles, your smooth muscle, your skeletal muscle, sorry. Everything in your body prepares you to survive. Now imagine living in that state all day. Maybe you don't have to imagine because you are living in that state all day. Many people do. And it's not because they're running from a tiger or some sort of predator, but because they are running from their thoughts. They're running from deadlines. They're running from one thing to another. Maybe they're running their kids all over. As my mother used to say, hell and half a creation. They're running from financial stress, health concerns, relationship struggles, perfectionism, constant notifications on your phone or your laptop. The brain interprets psychological stress the same way it does physical danger. The body doesn't know the difference between being chased by a bear and replaying the same anxious thought for the 100th time. So, meditation activates the opposite system. It's the parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest, digest, heal, and restore state. So the heart rate slows down, blood pressure decreases, breathing becomes deeper, digestion improves, inflammatory signals begin to quiet down, the immune system functions more efficiently, tissues repair themselves, hormones rebalance themselves. Your body finally receives the message that you're safe and it is okay to begin the healing process. And this is actually when healing becomes possible, when you are in this parasympathetic state or that parasympathetic aspect of your nervous system is activated. So this is why, as functional medicine practitioner, I rarely think of meditation as simply a mental health practice because it's not. It's actually a biological intervention. And this is why I think it is such an imperative piece to our health and healing protocols. I don't think it should ever be left out. It should be one of the foundational pieces that we implement with our clients and with ourselves, because every system in the body communicates with every other system. And so when stress becomes chronic, we don't just feel anxious, we begin to see measurable change throughout the body. Cortisol rhythms become disrupted, blood sugar regulation becomes less stable, inflammatory cytokines increase, sleep quality declines, digestive function slows, the gut barrier becomes more permeable, sex hormones begin to shift, thyroid function also begins to shift and become less efficient. Mitochondria, remember those tiny little energy producing organelles in every single cell that we have? They become less efficient at producing ATP. And over time, people begin to use phrases like, I'm exhausted, I can't focus, I have brain fog, my memory isn't what it used to be, I'm gaining weight even though I haven't changed anything, I feel wired at night, but I'm exhausted throughout the whole day, I just don't feel like myself anymore. These aren't character flaws, and they're not just part of, quote, normal aging. If anyone tells you that, that's bullshit. Don't accept that statement or that thought. This is literally you creating inflammation and disease in your own body just by your thoughts. And I want you to think about that and take that in. And I'm not saying it to lecture or to lay blame or to judge. This is just, it is what it is. It's how we operate as human beings. We need to come to a level of acceptance with this, understanding this connection between the biology, the physiology, and what its results truly are, so that we can change it and so that we can start looking at it through the lens of love, compassion, and acceptance, so that we can make the changes and we can create those changes and create the beings and the bodies that we want to be, instead of being subject to the autopilot that creates the sick and the inflamed pieces and parts of us that show up when we've lived this life way too long. We've spent way too long thinking and believing that we're under threat. So, meditation doesn't magically fix every root cause that I just explained. It won't replace nutrient deficiencies. Um, it can help sleep, but there are a lot of other aspects of sleep that you'll also need to implement to really improve your sleep. And it won't correct every hormone imbalance in and of itself, but it does change the internal environment, which allows the healing again to begin and to happen and to perpetuate. And that's what truly matters here, is because healing is incredibly difficult when the body never feels safe enough to shift out of that survival mode. And I'm just like you guys. I have personally lived through this. There was a season in my life when my body was screaming for help. I was working long hours. I was working many, many days straight as a critical care pharmacist in a hospital. I was working graveyard shift, which we know is inherently inflammatory to our body. I wanted to do everything extremely well. I mean, talk about perfectionism. I was also trying to start my own business and build my own business and study functional medicine and pursuing additional certificates and trying to go professionally and try to be a good spouse and a good dog mom and all of these things, trying to be everyone for everybody at the exact same time, placing enormous amount of pressure on myself to do it all, to be the best that I could be. And that's not a bad thing, to strive to be the best that you can be, but internally, my body was paying the price because I was overextended. I was not giving myself that time and that space to heal, to come out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. I essentially drove myself into full on adrenal exhaustion. I was exhausted in a way that there was not enough sleep in the world that could fix it. I started having brain fog. I definitely had less resilience. Um, a lot of times I would be short tempered, or, I consider myself to be pretty laid back, but sometimes just the tiniest little thing would, throw me into a panic attack or like really trigger an anger response in myself. And I did what I had been trained to do as a pharmacist. First, I looked towards um, medication or like help from other Western medicine practitioners. But when that didn't help, then I went down the supplement aisle and I'm like, oh, well, maybe some of these supplements can help me. And some of them did. But there was another piece to that. I definitely went down the road of investigating all my labs and trying a myriad of different protocols. And I would say each protocol I did allow another layer of healing and helping, because there were physiological things that I needed to change and to heal and to fix within myself. And functional medicine gave me really important answers and supported my body with targeted nutrition, with sleep, and lifestyle changes that do matter tremendously. But eventually I realized that I couldn't supplement myself out of a nervous system that never felt safe or calm. And it wasn't necessarily that my body was broken. My body actually wasn't broken. I had worn it down, but it was actually doing all the things it was supposed to do. It was responding exactly the way it was supposed to respond. But ultimately, what created the lasting healing that I finally found and created for myself wasn't just changing what I put into my body, but it was changing the signals that my brain was sending to my body every single day. And meditation became one of the most important ways and a foundational way that I did that. Not because it made my life stress-free. It definitely didn't. But it changed how my nervous system responded to life and responded to stress. And that shift was just as healing as any of the other things that I did. So, if you've listened to this show for a period of time, you know that I am life coach certified through the life coach school. And within that, there is a tool that we use called the model. It's beautifully simple. It starts with circumstances. Circumstance happens to us. They are factual. And then our thoughts about those circumstances create our feelings. And those feelings drive our actions, and our actions then create our results, what we see show up in our life. Most of us live as though our feelings come directly from our circumstances. So, for example, like my boss stresses me out, or this traffic ruined my morning, or my inbox is overwhelming me. But there is something in between, and that is the thought. And so maybe your circumstance is that you received an email. Your story about the email might be different, but the actual circumstance is I received an email. But then your brain instantly created a thought of I'm already behind. And that thought creates the feeling of anxiety. And that anxiety changes your breathing, your posture, your heart rate. It raises your stress hormones. It narrows your attention and influences how you respond to the person in that email. And so maybe you respond in a short, curt way to that email, and then that creates a result of maybe conflict or drama or whatever. The entire physiological cascade began with the thought, I'm already behind. Meditation gives us the ability to notice that thought before it automatically takes over. So we don't suppress it, we don't judge it, we just notice it. We're aware. And we can say, that's interesting that my brain is telling me that I'm behind. And in that small moment of awareness, that interrupts that autopilot. And in that interruption of that autopilot is where our choices and our freedoms live. So instead of being unconsciously driven by every thought that our brain produces, we actually get to ask, is this thought actually true? Are you really behind? Maybe yes, maybe no. Is this thought helpful? Is it helpful for you to think that you're behind? And is there another way to see this? And so that's where meditation and self-coaching can really become powerful partners. Meditation teaches us how to observe our minds, and self-coaching teaches us what to do with what we observe. And so together, they help us change our thinking, but what they're really doing is helping us change our biology, which then gets to help us change literally the manifestation of our health and our well-being as it shows up in physical reality. So meditation is really more than just relaxation. As transformative as the science of meditation is, I have to tell you, it's really only half of the story, because while meditation absolutely changes our brain, it also changes our relationship with ourselves. And for me, meditation stopped just being a wellness habit years ago, and it actually became a non-negotiable aspect of living every day of my life. It became a place where I stopped trying so hard to figure everything out or fix everything. And I actually just started making space for awareness, making space for wisdom, making space for acceptance of what is without the judgment attached to it. And if you have listened to this podcast for a while, you also know that I believe that we're more than our physical bodies. Yes, we are biological beings. Yes, we're biochemical, but we're also emotional. We are also energetic. We are also spiritual beings having a human experience. And so our thoughts do affect our biology. emotions do affect our physiology. Our nervous system influences every organ in the body and how it communicates with each other, which then creates this overall picture of health and wellness or disease and inflammation. Everything is connected. You can't get away from it. You can't deny it. It just is. It is what it is. Meditation became the practice that allowed me to experience that connection instead of just simply believing it intellectually. Like knowing something is true versus experiencing it are two very different things. And so you don't have to subscribe to or believe in any particular spiritual or religious tradition for meditation to change your life. And whether you think of meditation as mindfulness, communion with God or source, listening to your intuition or connecting with your higher self, or just simply training your attention away from that anxiety and away from that frantic pace of life, meditation is a practice that works. And it's interesting too, as I've had an evolution through with and through religion. I was raised in East Tennessee in the Southern Baptist tradition. I have not practiced that tradition since I was 18, is when I chose to walk away from it. But being raised in that tradition, you're definitely raised with a certain definition of prayer. But as I have studied a variety of other metaphysical and spiritual traditions, and as I've studied and practiced and become a yoga teacher of a variety of traditions as well, prayer has become as something that I have come back to, and I've opened myself up to reevaluate what it is and what it means to me and what it looks like outside of the context of religion. So one of the things that I like to think about is prayer is that communication with source or your angels, and meditation is the listening. So whether we use the word God or source or divine intelligence or universal consciousness, higher self, infinite love or divine love, or even just your inner wisdom, the invitation is the same. And so prayer is often expressive, meaning we are definitely assigning specific words. Maybe we offer gratitude or we ask for guidance or protection. Maybe sometimes we share our fears. We are asking or seeking clarity. And in contrast, meditation is receptive, meaning we are open to receiving. Maybe we're receiving light, we're receiving energy, we're receiving the guidance that we asked for. It's becoming quiet enough to notice what has always been present beneath all the noise in our life. And some of our most important decisions, or some of the most important decisions that I've ever made, didn't come while I was frantically analyzing every single possible outcome or making my, like pros and cons list. They came when I stopped trying so hard to force an answer and I opened myself up to receive the answer, to receive the guidance. So maybe sometimes you'll notice when you're in the shower, you get, like an epiphany out of an idea, or maybe it's during a walk, or maybe it's while you're driving home or driving to and from work. Maybe you're just daydreaming out the window. These ideas, these answers, these aha moments come because you have allowed your analytical mind to relax. You've stopped obsessing and you've allowed your brain waves to shift. And so that's also what's happening during meditation, as we are maybe with more intention allowing our brain waves to shift, but we are entering into a receptive state and we are becoming available and open for that deeper knowing and that deeper understanding and that deeper knowledge. So, really, the quiet is never empty. And one reason many people avoid meditation is because they're afraid of that silence or that quiet or what they'll find in the silence or the quiet. And the first few times we sit quietly, we often notice that our mind just becomes louder, sometimes even more speedy and more frantic. Old conversations replay, unfinished emotions surface, our to-do list appears and just rotates nonstop. Our anxiety can actually become more noticeable, and that's not pleasant or fun. So it's like, well, why am I doing this stupid meditation thing when I'm just feeling worse? So a lot of people conclude that, oh, meditation just made me more anxious. It didn't actually help, the anxiety at all, but it revealed what was already asking for our attention. So for years, we become experts in distracting ourselves. We distract ourselves with phones, television, work, scrolling, constant productivity, and the silence removes those distractions, ideally. And that can really feel uncomfortable because the we're not used to it. And so our brain doesn't know what to do with it. It's an unknown for our brain. But that discomfort isn't failure. And it's actually sometimes the beginning of healing because we cannot heal what we are unwilling to witness. And eventually, if we continue practicing, we begin noticing something pretty remarkable. And that's that the thoughts continue to come and go, and those emotions continue to rise and fall. But we realize that we, in and of ourselves and our beingness, are not those thoughts. And we are not those emotions. We are the awareness, the observer of both of those things. And the realization that we are the observer of the thoughts, we are the observer of the emotions. That's what really changes everything. And so that brings us to one of my favorite concepts, and I think something that is really imperative here to evaluate. It's the difference between our ego self and the higher self. And so I don't think of the ego as the enemy. The ego has an important job, and its purpose is our survival. It scans for danger, it compares, it predicts, it protects. It asks questions like, what if I fail? What if they judge me? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I'm not enough? The ego is always seeking certainty, control, predictability, safety. So I think I think that piece right there is what allows me to have compassion for my egoic self because I can see that it is seeking safety. Even if once I start to examine it, it's irrational, it is still seeking safety. But your higher self speaks differently. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't criticize, it gently invites. It invites you to see something differently, to look at it from a different perspective. It doesn't create panic, it actually creates peace. Your higher self will ask, what would love choose? If you were coming to this situation from a perspective of love and compassion, how would it look different? How would your choices be different? Your higher self asks you, what feels aligned here? What would courage look like in this situation? And what lessons might we experience or learn from this situation instead of looking at it from as a victim, this happened to me. Maybe what lesson can I learn from this? That is a question from your higher self. So one voice contracts your world, the ego, and the other expands it, the higher self. And meditation does not eliminate the ego, let's be clear and let's be real. It's always going to be there. This is part of what is being called being human. It is what we are as humans. Ego is part of us. But meditation allows us to recognize when the ego is driving the bus and to become aware and then choose something differently. Because once we're aware, then we gain the freedom to choose with our voice, with our actions. And then that changes the outcome. That changes our perspective. That changes everything. And so one of the things, since I've been meditating for years now, and I have lots of different ways I like to meditate, and I change it up all the time. But one of the things I've been experimenting with lately is meditating with my eyes open. Many people just assume that meditation requires your eyes being closed. And that's a beautiful way to start. It's a beautiful way to practice. But actually, eyes open engages more of your senses and actually engages more of your brain. And honestly, life doesn't happen with our eyes closed all the time, right? So the real goal isn't to become peaceful only while sitting on a meditation cushion with our eyes closed. The goal really is learning how to remain connected to ourselves while fully participating in life. And sometimes you can sit with a cup of tea, you can and meditate. You can sit and watch the sunrise with your eyes open while meditating. You can close your eyes and listen to the wind through the trees, or again, open your eyes and listen to the wind and watch how the leaves move with the wind. Maybe you watch the light dance across the water at a sunrise or sunset. But the key is to allow your gaze to soften. And rather than focusing on one specific object or specific point, you allow yourself to become aware of the entire visual field. It could be the sky, the trees, the mountains, the space in between something like leaves. And this simple shift can have a remarkable effect on our nervous system. Because when we're stressed, again, remember our vision naturally narrows, and that's part of the survival response. But when we intentionally soften our gaze and broaden our awareness, we're actually practicing with intention the opposite state. And we may move away from the tunnel vision and towards a more expansive way of taking in our surroundings. And many people that this naturally pairs with slower breathing and a greater sense of ease. And then, so instead of scanning for threats, we begin to notice beauty and stillness and presence and connection. And that's one of the reasons I've been using the Shri yantra behind me. That's a great tool for softening that gaze and just noticing where your eye is gravitating towards in the Shri yantra. There's a lot that it could look at here. I'll try to move it. And it really doesn't matter where it falls, because as you move around, there's a sacred geometry embedded within this image as well. That all these interlocking triangles that you can see behind me are surrounded by circles and a lotus petal. And at first glance, it looks incredibly complex. But after a few minutes of gazing at it, something really interesting starts to happen. You stop trying to understand it with, again, that monkey mind part of the brain, and you simply begin to start experiencing it. And so rather than staring intensely, soften your eyes, soften your gaze, and allow the geometry to draw your awareness inward. And for thousands of years, the Sri Yantra has been used in yogic traditions as an object of meditation and contemplation. And spiritually, it symbolizes the interconnectedness of creation and the relationship between individual consciousness and universal consciousness. So, whether you approach it as a sacred symbol or simply as a beautiful visual anchor, it offers the mind somewhere gentle to rest. And so some people notice that the pattern seems to shimmer or appear almost three-dimensional after several minutes of relaxed viewing. And that's a normal visual phenomenon that can occur when we maintain steady attention on this intricate pattern. What's more interesting to me, though, is what happens internally. As the visual system becomes quieter, the mind also naturally becomes quieter. The symbol becomes an anchor, helping us to return to presence whenever the mind begins to wander. So, if this calls to you, maybe try it out. You can also pick other forms of sacred geometry to meditate on. And there's another practice here that I would love to share with you today as well. And this is really called seeing through the heart. And it's very simple, but it's one that I think is definitely powerful and can shift so many different aspects of our life. And so you place one hand over your heart and you can softly gaze towards the horizon, or you can gaze into the flame of a candle, not focusing on anything particular, but just allow yourself to tune in with your breath with your hand over your heart. And notice that your breath will naturally start slowing down. And imagine just for a few moments that you start to see the world through your heart instead of through your eyes. And this isn't about trying to see anything mystical. It's really about just changing the quality of your attention. So instead of analyzing, become curious. Instead of judging, become compassionate. Instead of searching for what's wrong, begin noticing what's beautiful, what's alive, what's already there supporting you. And maybe you even invite yourself to ask, what do I most need to know today? And listen for that answer through your heart space. Just listening. Sometimes nothing comes through. Sometimes a lot comes through. Sometimes a memory. Sometimes an awareness or a knowing. Sometimes just a profound sense of peace. And whatever it is, know that that's enough. There is no one right way to meditate. That's one of the biggest myths I think that we can dispel today. Some people connect deeply with mindfulness meditation. I love mantra meditation too, especially as a tool to, again, focus the mind. Others, and I use this a lot as well, breath work, breath meditation. If you practice Kundalini yoga, you know that a lot of these tools are incorporated together throughout the yoga practice so that you're, again, stimulating different parts of the brain and the body. And then there are tools like body scans, there's yoga nidra, there's visualization, heart coherence, walking meditations, contemplative prayer, sound baths, guided meditations, open eye meditations, candle gazing, sacred geometry, even gardening, painting, knitting. All of these are actually a type of meditation because they cultivate different qualities of the mind and they get us out of the monkey mind and into that openness, into that receptivity, into the awareness. So we actually are able to develop compassion. We are able to regulate our nervous system. We become able to inspire creativity and deepen spiritual connection, especially if that's your intention. And sometimes some of these methods simply help us remember who we are beneath all the constant noise in our lives. The best meditation isn't the one that someone else or even me is telling you to practice. It's actually the one that you resonate with, that you love, and that you return to again and again because you love it, you enjoy it. It lights you up, it feeds your soul, it helps you feel better. Whatever it is, that is the key here. That's the meditation that's for you. So I encourage you to try a myriad of them. Maybe, you try one for 3 to 5 days and see how it feels and see what changes that you notice. And maybe it doesn't resonate and you leave that one and you try a different one. But if you've made it into this episode this far with me today, then I hope one thing has become clear, that meditation isn't about becoming someone else or becoming someone new. It's actually coming home to who you already are, to who you've always been. We live in a culture that teaches us to constantly do more, achieve more, produce more, optimize more. Meditation invites us into something completely different. It actually asks us, who are we when we stop the doing? Who are we when we stop the striving? Who are you when you stop believing every thought that your mind is producing on autopilot? Because underneath all of that mental activity is where the stillness lies, is where the wisdom is, and where the peace is created. And again, none of us are broken. And that's a thought, again, that maybe we need to question when we hear this mantra from advertising and from different aspects of healthcare that is constantly beating the drum of you're sick, you're ill, you're broken, you need to be fixed. That's actually not true, but it's your choice to believe it or not. And meditation can help us step out of that mantra and create a new one. It helps us remember, and it helps ask us to choose who we want to be. And so, just like one workout plan won't completely transform your body, one meditation session also won't transform your life. It is a practice. The power isn't found in one session, it's found in the practice of working out, the practice of meditation. It's found in the returning, the coming back, the repetition. Remember that repetition can be both positive and negative, constructive and deconstructive. So how are you going to return? How are you going to come back again and again over weeks, over days, over weeks, over months and years? And maybe you notice something remarkable begins to happen, that you become less emotionally reactive. Not because life is necessarily easier or has changed that much, but because your capacity has changed. You recover from stress more quickly. Your thoughts, you notice your thoughts instead of immediately reacting to them. You pause before reacting. Your nervous system becomes more resilient. Your sleep improves. Your relationships deepen because you are more present and you are more aware. Your creativity expands. Your intuition becomes easier to hear because the noise has become quieter. And maybe most importantly, you actually begin to trust yourself. You become to trust your gut, trust your intuition. And not because you always know exactly what to do, when to do it exactly at the right time, but because you've learned how to become still enough to hear and receive your own inner wisdom. So, a lot of people actually ask me, well, how long should I meditate? And honestly, I actually think that's probably not the best or the correct question. But the better question might be, how often can I return to the present moment? Because meditation isn't really measured in minutes. I mean, it is because that's how the structure we've assigned it to, but really it's measured by awareness. And every time we notice our mind wandering and gently bring it back, that's meditation. Every pause before a reaction, that's meditation. Every moment we soften our shoulders instead of tightening them up to our ears, that's meditation. And every moment you choose curiosity instead of self-judgment, that's meditation. The meditation cushion might be simply where we choose to practice for that day. But life and how we live our life is actually where the meditation happens. And so, if you have a moment today, I would actually like to guide you through a little meditation practice. If you're driving or if you're in a space where you need to be present, please, you can listen, but don't practice with us right now. But this heart coherence practice and meditation that I want to take you through um, is one of, I think, the most profound, simple but profound. So, our heart is constantly sending information back to the brain through the vagus nerve and other neural pathways. And so, when our breathing becomes slow and steady, your heart rhythm actually becomes more organized. And as your heart and brain begin to work together in greater synchrony, that state is called heart coherence. And many people notice that they can think more clearly, feel more emotionally balanced, and recover from stress more quickly. And so I would like to give you that experience for today. So if you're driving, please keep your eyes open and just follow along with your awareness and maybe, with your breathing. But if you're somewhere comfortable, then this is a meditation that you can do with your eyes closed. So allow them to gently close down, or you can soften your gaze towards the horizon or soften it on anything you might be looking at. Take a slow, comfortable, deep breath through your nose and slowly exhale. You can choose to exhale through your nose or your mouth, whichever you prefer. Again, gently inhale and a long, relaxed exhale. Allow your shoulders to soften. Allow your jaw to relax. Let your hands rest comfortably and continue the pace of the slow inhale and the slow exhale. Place one hand over the center of your chest, over your heart, and just start to imagine, see, or visualize your breath moving in and out through your heart space. There's nothing special you need to do, just your attention and intention on your heart is enough. Simply allow yourself to imagine that every inhale flows gently into your heart and every exhale flows back out slowly, effortlessly, and comfortably. Continue breathing at whatever pace feels natural and good to you. Now bring to mind someone, someplace, a beloved pet, or a memory that naturally brings you feelings of appreciation, of gratitude, of love. Not excitement, not intensity, just quiet appreciation, gratitude, or love. Maybe it's watching a sunrise or a sunset. Maybe it's hearing the laughter of a loved one. Maybe it's feeling the warm embrace of someone you love. Maybe it's standing on the beside the ocean or at the top of a mountain, walking through the forest, or holding a child. Maybe it's about remembering a moment when life felt beautifully simple. And I want you to allow yourself to really feel it. Feel that memory. Notice where the feeling lives in your body and allow that feeling to gently expand with each breath. Imagine that appreciation, the gratitude, the love filling your heart, then filling up your chest, and then expanding out to your shoulders, your arms, your abdomen, your legs, filling and expanding until your entire body is resting in this feeling of calm presence. And just bask in this feeling for a few cycles of breath. From this place of coherence, from this place of stillness, gently ask yourself, what do I most need today? And just simply be open to receive and listen for the answer. Don't search, don't force. Just be open to receive. Maybe you receive a word, maybe an image, maybe a feeling, maybe nothing at all. Whatever arises, receive it with kindness. Take one final slow breath in, long and gentle, and release it on the exhale. Start to come back into the room, into the space where you are. Feel the chair beneath you. Notice your feet. Gently wiggle your fingers and your toes. And if your eyes have been closed, slowly open them and simply notice how you feel. And before we wrap up today, I want you to remember something, that meditation isn't about having fewer thoughts, that it's actually about having more freedom in and what you do with those thoughts. And remember that your mind was never meant to be silent. It was meant to become your partner, not your master. And every time you pause, every time you breathe, every time you soften your gaze or place your hand on your heart, you are reminding your nervous system that it is safe. You are strengthening new neural pathways. You are creating space between your thoughts and your reactions. You're building resilience. And perhaps most importantly, you are coming home to yourself. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If this episode helped you see meditation in a new light, I'd love if you would share it with someone who could also maybe use a new perspective or more peace and presence in their life. And if you're looking for more conversations that blend functional medicine, mindset, spiritual growth, be sure to subscribe and like Light Body Radio. And until next time, take a deep breath, trust your inner wisdom, lead with your heart, and remember that your light never goes out. sometimes it just needs a little stillness to shine a little brighter. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on Light Body Radio, where functional medicine meets intuitive healing and transformation happens on every level. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, and if you're ready to go deeper, visit drlaramay.com to book a functional medicine consultation or an intuitive healing session. Whether you need to rebalance your body, clear your energetic blocks, or reconnect with your soul's purpose, I've got you. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Lara May for daily inspiration, energy updates, and healing tools. Remember, your healing is multidimensional, and so are you. Until next time, honor your body, trust your intuition, and activate your light.